clearing process. Causes of congestion at the ports. One is inadequate terminal space at the ports. The terminal space at the ports of value is unable to optimally accommodate the current rate of container cargo arriving at the ports due to the growth in traffic inflow without the corresponding terminal expansion. The review of the port's layout and site visits has revealed that the port has three terminals: Terminal 22, former PWD terminal, and the North terminal, designated for storage of container cargoes. However, all the three terminals are storing beyond their respective capacity, thus adding on to the congestion at the ports. For example, Terminal 22 and PWD, which is specified to start 900 containers, is tagging 1,200 containers during the time of our visit. In addition, we noted that these container terminals are now only used for storage of container cargoes as designated, but were also used for other activities such as stripping or unstuffing of containers, for example, loading of containers onto trucks for delivery and other activities which, according to management, were supposed to be carried out at a designated area outside these terminals. But due to space problem at the ports, they could not be carried out elsewhere except at the terminal, which occupies the space where the containers were to be placed. However, we noted during our site visits and review of ports documents that GPA, in its move to implement the Ports Extension Master Plan 2019 to 2024, to expand and decongest the ports for efficient handling of cargo and its related activities, rented land from Sadia Trading for additional storage area in July 2019 with a dimension of 25,918 meters square. At a rental rate of $9.22 per meter square, equivalent to $239,964 per annum. 964 per annum, but failed to utilize it for the intended purpose for that particular commercial year. The business arrangement of paying this huge amount of money only to assess the services later, whilst there is still congestion at the ports, is neither economical nor effective. A visit to this rented land revealed only a small portion, as at the time of our visit, was utilized to store imported vehicles awaiting clearance, with the port's terminal left to battle with issues of space for incoming containers. Furthermore, we have noted the expansion process has started as private land, in addition to Sadia rented land, which was acquired and is now designated for transit containers. The property situated along Bone Road was acquired in 2017 from Busra Trading, measuring 6,000 meters square at an annual rate of $7,050 per meter square to March 2022 for the storage of empty containers, which amounts to $2,250,000 annually. The rented property is being used as the construction is ongoing. Although positive steps are taken to resolve the congestion at the ports, the pace at which solutions are implemented is extremely slow. In addition, other acquisition engagements such as the acquisition of KG5, Muslim High School, and other family communal lands are also taking a lot of time to be accomplished. In the light of this, it is not reasonable to think that GPA can meet the timelines of decongesting the ports as stipulated in the Ports Master Plan 2019-2024 in the short run is visible. As a result of the limited terminal space at the cost of value, the following effects take place. A. Poor stacking methods. According to the management of GPA, the stacking methods to be used in the ports depends on the layout of the terminal and the plans utilized by the ports in its operation. The layout of binary ports was designated to accommodate a 4-row stacking method, and the plans in use for stacking are the ridge stackers. We noted during our site visit that port is stacking containers in the 12-row stacking method. This, according to the management of the ports, was due to the increase in throughput without a corresponding terminal capacity enhancement to accommodate or match the current storage request of container cargoes. We noted instances where 13 or 14-row stacking methods are used, which is far below the standard of the 4-row stacking method found in other ports within the sub-region. In addition, best practices in container stacking requires that containers are stacked distinctly in order to dispatch transit, shipping line companies, and empties. We noted that the stacking method in place at the port of Banjul makes it difficult to trace and track containers, as containers are not segregated or sorted out by order of shipping lines. That is, all the containers as containers are not segregated, all the containers contained are stacked indiscretely, irrespective of the shipping lines, which makes it difficult during this discharging. As a result of this, the service delivery is delayed, as a lot of time is taken to locate the containers before they can be cleared. This was substantiated by the confirmation of the Director of Traffic, who highlighted in an interview that the limited space has resulted in the systems that makes it difficult to locate the containers during the clearing process. Clearing agents have also raised concern during an interview that sometimes it takes them days to locate containers and would sometimes have to pay cash locals to search for the containers within the terminal. This stacking method does not only affect the workflow of GPA or the delay in service delivery, but it also affects the shipping lines, who also find it hard to locate their empty containers, and would result in having employees at the ports searching for their containers. B, overusing the plants. Another implication of the limited space is the overusing of plants. We noted during site visits that GPA currently has 9 available ridge stackers. However, due to the intensive nature of the work, not all these plants will be available for use at once. That is, they will be operated on a shift basis. Some will be switched off while others are left to cool off or be on standby mode. In the light of this, plant availability information is rolled out to the operations department daily. The practice with regards to the plant's allocation would mean a ridge stacker is allocated to a vessel during discharge and loading of containers, and only 2 ridge stackers will be allocated to all the 3 terminals for delivery to consignees. These 2 ridge stackers would be crisscrossing between offloading and loading of containers for dispatch or delivery, which according to the management is not healthy and ideal for this plant, as it exerts enormous pressure on their operational life. Furthermore, considering the number of containers that are requested for delivery and dispatch daily, it is not reasonable to think that only 2 containers at a time can meet or cope with the demand of the consignee or clients. This does not only add to clients' frustration, but also cause severe damages to these machines, as they would be forced to operate beyond planned time, which is the case in most instances according to management. For example, discussion with the mechanical department: when the plants are functional, they are used for 20 hours a day and are only given 4 hours cooling period. Extraction from the plant time sheet revealed that a particular plant has clocked 8,000 hours of operation in less than a year. This is equivalent to 300 and 33 days of continuous operation for the particular plant in less than 1 year. It should be noted that these are machines that may break down at some point due to mechanical fault resulting from intense use or due to normal course of operation. When the breakdown of plants coincides with the berthing of 2 or more vessels, the terminal will still be left to battle with only one reach stacker to deal with the inflow and movement of containers, thus overworking the plant and delaying further the delivery service. Similarly, the port wing, where these empties are normally handled, also is allocated only one reach stacker to offload return containers from trucks and load other containers to return to the ports, main yard or terminal. Considering the inflow of return containers from the consignees to be offloaded from private trucks and empty containers to be loaded on trucks to return to the main yard of the port, all these are to be carried out using only one reach stacker. This causes serious delay as most truck drivers or trailers must have to wait for hours and sometimes days for reach stackers to discharge the empty containers of their trails or trucks. According to the discussion held with the port staff, this sole reach stacker has sometimes recalled if the port's operations are at peak, leaving none at this spot. This does not only affect service delivery by the ports, but amounts to losses for these waiting drivers or truck owners whose livelihood depends on the earn realized from these vehicles. Currently, the stacking method is in use due to the limited space, puts pressure on plants and at the same time slows down the process of delivering the cargoes to the importers. This was amplified by the Deputy Director of Technical Services, that limited capacity of ports and port stacking methods restricts the free maneuvering of the plants and cause frequent breakdown to the plant, which is not economical and leads to heavy fuel consumption. Overusing the plants will not only degrade the plant, but will limit their lifespan, which defeats the essence of value for money, considering the high cost associated with these plants. Despite the mounting pressure of work on these few existing reach stackers and other plants of the ports, coupled with considerable delay in service delivery by the ports to its users or customers, we noted during our site visit that 3 reach stackers were procured in December 2020, including container trailer and spreaders. These are, however, yet to be commissioned. If they were commissioned, they will, to a large extent, help in improving service delivery and reduce the overusing of plants. These plants, as they are kept lying or stationed at this spot, are subjected to wear and tear as go over time. 2.2.2. Importers using the ports of Banjul as storage area. Sorry, yes. The port should action cargoes that spend 3 months at the port without being cleared by the consignee. However, this process should be initiated by GRA. The Port Use and Rates Regulation of April 2013 provides that the authority may reduce or waive storage charges. When goods are detained by the Department of Customs and Excise, where chief collectors certify that the detention is in no way attributable to importers.
Did you look at customs again? The department?
The Department of Customs and Excise, where chief collectors certify that the detention is in no way attributable to the importers or his agent. In exceptional circumstances where hardship is involved, it should be noted that import rents are penal and are in the interest of all concerned importers, to remove the cargo from the authority's transit set and stacking areas before the rent-free period elapses. A review of GPA's internal audit reports have over the years emphasized and discouraged the number of rent waivers issued to importers who are mostly profit-making entities. We have noted that 115,536,789 were issued as rent waivers between 2018 and 2016 and 2020. As stipulated in GPA Act 1972, the issuing of waivers is at the discretion of the managing director, whom the applicant has to convince that the delay was due to economic hardship or some very genuine problems which affected the applicant's ability to clear the cargoes within the given time. The Act is not, however, clear on what documents to submit to back applicant's claim, nor is there a monitoring mechanism in place to ensure that waivers issued are well supported, as the internal audit who reports directly to the board do not have access to the waivers application document for scrutiny. In addition, a review of the post-rent register revealed that the rent charges are ascending in the first period, but at a certain point, the amount payable is fixed, which may prove to be conducive to the importers, as it is clear to them that the payable amount is fixed, irrespective of number of days the cargo spent at the port. For example, the amount paid after 3 months after rent would be the same as the amount paid after 6 months. And with rent waivers possibility, the amount may even be lesser. Furthermore, the policy of moving the cargoes to the auction after this designated 3 months is not fully implemented, which could contribute to importers not being in a rush to clear their cargoes, especially in the light of expensive rent charges outside the ports. They may be willing to let their cargoes to lay down at the terminal, which are usually fully secured and cheaper than outside. Port rent fees are designed for the main purpose of discouraging the users of the ports from using the ports as a storage facility, which contributes to congestion. But in the event where this occurs, the institution must ensure it is rewarded accordingly by implementing the full details of the Act and only issuing waivers when applicants are thoroughly screened to ensure the applications are only approved for genuine applicants. Conclusion. The Port of Banjul does not have the required terminal space to handle the current throughput optimally. As a result, stacking methods that are below standard are used to accommodate container cargoes, which restricts the easy maneuvering of plants and increase the number of shifting, thus contributing to the overusing of plants. The limited number of plant availability also contributes immensely to the overusing of plants and also slow down the service delivery. Lastly, issuing rent waivers does not also help reduce congestion and leads to loss of revenue. Our recommendation: firstly, there is an urgent need for expansion of the terminal to match the current rate of increased throughput and be able to handle the anticipated increase in future. The management of GPA is aware of this, as captured in the Post Master Plan 2019-2024. The plans documented were reviewed and endorsed by the government of the Gambia. Hence, if implemented, it is expected to decongest the ports, fastening the service delivery, thus increasing the competitive advantage of the Port of Banjul. Although there are plans in place, their implementations are slow and needs to be expedited. The management of GPA should be prudent in its business arrangement with the private landowners. A huge amount of investment to decongest the ports should not be made only to utilize those places after 1 year or 2 years, while they are still grappling with congestion. These investments should only be made when the place is readily available for use. To gain value for money, management should ensure that the elapses rents for lease periods are compensated by not paying the subsequent rent or lease fees to cover up for the lost time. It will also be unfair and tantamount to the wastage of taxpayers' money to pay for services that were not utilized. Secondly, it is utmost important that the planned availability of reports is augmented. We are aware that these are capital-intensive plans and will be unreasonable to request for GPA to acquire a fleet of them, but also have limited quantity a limited quantity in place will not be prudent, or will it be efficient or effective, as the limited available quantity will be overused and end up having a short lifespan. The same applies to efficiency and effectiveness, as operations will be slow, affecting efficiency and service delivery will not be conducive optimally, thus affecting effective service delivery. The management of GPAs should lay emphasis on purchasing rich status in their yearly budget and flagging it as critical in their budget. The procured rich status should be commissioned as soon as possible, as the post cannot afford to invest huge amount of monies in those plans and leave them idling while it struggles with plant availability. The newly procured plans can to a large extent reduce the overusing of existing ones and improve service delivery. Going forward, management should ensure that plans are commissioned in shorter periods after delivery. Otherwise, value for money is compromised, leaving such expensive plans unused when they are critical in improving the current status at the port. Thirdly, rent waivers are indeed an important aspect of cargo handling and crucial in maintaining a strong partnership with the users of the ports. It translates to supporting the users of the ports and waiving down costs during difficult conditions beyond their control. However, strong mechanisms should be put in place to ensure that rent waivers are approved for genuine applicants and that the process is not abused. The ports mustn't be seen as a potential storage facility, as this leads to port congestion, which has a negative impact on the operations of the ports. Management should institute a system that requires rent waiver applicants to submit concrete documentary evidence supporting their application. All tax waiver applications with the necessary supporting documents must be filed and made available for review by internal audit and external auditors. This enhances accountability, improves transparency.
Management.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On 4.2.1, inadequate terminal space at the port. The daily stock of containers stacked at the available terminal areas is well above the existing storage capacity, which leads to non-adherence to the optimal stacking pattern, given the equipment in use for handling containers. This causes congestion, loss of shifting required to access both import and export containers on a forced-in, forced-out basis, increases the dwell time and resultant demurrage charges. The value of containers within the import terminal cannot be avoided, given that the port is a designated customs zone, and due to the requirements of GRA for inspections to determine duties to be levied on goods, containers cannot leave the port area without being subject to stripping. The rental of private property at Bond Road, Sadia, in brackets, is currently being used for the storage of import vehicles and Ro-Ro cargo, which would otherwise have been handled within an already congested port area. Another private property along Bond Road has been on an annual rental by the port for the stacking of empty containers. The GTTI annex has been acquired at $24 million from the owners and the structures demolished, the area being earmarked for the relocation of the present head office complex. Muslim senior secondary school owners have expressed their willingness to sell the school site to the GPA, and independent valuation is being prepared by management in order to guide the negotiation for the financial compensation. Meanwhile, Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education have allocated a school facility in Brusili for the immediate relocation of the school to allow GPA access the site. This is expected to be achieved by end October 2021, and part of the area, together with the adjacent GTTI annex, utilized as storage terminals. With the proposed relocation of the present head office complex, the current site occupied by the office will be rehabilitated by uprooting the pavement and raising it to a higher level with proper storm water drains. The depression along these areas of the north and south terminals bordering the head office complex form part of basic yard extension phase 1. Negotiations are at an advanced stage for the settlement of 2 of the remaining properties to be acquired in the half-dry area within the contiguous zone of the port area. The area measuring about 22,000 square meters in total. The owners of these properties are requesting for amounts in excess of what the independent valuation by the GPA calls for. Another challenge linked to the acquisition of the half-dry properties is the demand by the category occupants for compensation by GPA before the half-dry property owners can be allowed access to the alternative plots at category being allocated as part of the compensation package. The GPA has solicited government support for access to the unallocated portions of the bond folder for construction of up-to-up terminals to relocate all activities in the cargo handling processes that have human interference, which is desirable to optimize ship productivity and port performance. A. Port stacking method. The port stacking method is the direct outcome of the need to accommodate an increasing volume of containers, which is not matched by a corresponding increase in the storage area. The opportunity to adopt the recommended stacking pattern compatible with the equipment in use can only be achieved with this increase in the space allocation. Overusing of plants. The increased demand on the equipment due to the cargo handling needs to service 2 vessels simultaneously, 4 storage terminals and the off-dock sites, the limited turning aisles, at times less than 6 meters, whereas 15 meters clearance is required between container blocks. The continuous operations around the clock, all of these contribute to the frequent breakdown of the equipment, particularly the rig stackers used in container lifting. Notwithstanding, the GPA annually makes provision in its recurrent budget for the procurement of additional equipment to complement the existing fleet. Contracts have been signed and 2 new rig stackers are expected to be delivered by January 2022 by the manufacturer Congestion. 4.2.2 Importers using the port as a storage area. The granting of rent waivers is currently discouraged, except in situations where duty-free or government consignments are involved. Other instances of granting waivers arise when goods owners already pay for delivery and could not receive cargo due to congestion, and the amount of shifting required can practically not be done at the material time. The system of documenting rent waivers is already in place, as all delivery orders are lodged with the rating manager. Management will implement an improved administrative system that will allow for formal applications with supporting documents to be attached for ease of verification and audit purposes. The delivery time for port handling equipment is part of the criteria in the procurement evaluation process, and 6 months is the average from date of award to manufacture, supply, and delivery. Thank you.
Go to the next one.
4.3 Inefficient Stevedoring Services. Section 120, subsection Section 120, subsection 1 of the Labour Act 2007 states that the Gambia Ports Authority is responsible for the recruitment of dock workers as such terms and conditions as it may be determined as appropriate. Stevedore or handling operators is any physical or moral person carrying out ship loading and offloading operations including related operations such as storage or removal of the goods to and from a warehouse or open storage yard. Stevedoring is the operations from ship hatch to crane hook before discharging to land or truck. During our interview with major importers and shipping lines, concerns and frustrations about the slow pace of discharging of cargoes were brought forward. A review of the dock workers register revealed that 48% of the stevedores who are responsible for discharging cargoes are aged workers above the age of 50 to 60 years. Given the nature of work, it is not reasonable to believe that aged workers between 50 to 60 years can be efficient and effective. According to the major importers, there are times where they would have to resort in hiring some helping hands to make the discharging of bulk cargoes faster, especially when the days of demurrages are fast approaching. This is an additional cost for the importers, which they claim would be added to the cost of the goods in the market. Discharging containerized cargoes requires dock workers to climb on the vessels to place the crane hooks on the containers, which cannot be done by workers aged 50 and above. As we were opportune to visit the quay during discharge, dock workers were seen at 5 heights top of vessels, and we were told such is also done in night shifts and sometimes in very harsh weather conditions like rains, winds. Thus, it will be an occupational hazard to have aged workers to do such work. Furthermore, the aged workers does not only affect the stevedores, but it cuts across all the categories of dock workers. The dock worker register revealed that 18% of dock workers are 60 years and above, which is a violation of the general orders governing all public institutions. According to the management of GPA, the dock workers were absorbed through negotiations with the Ministry of Trade with the Dock Labour Act of 2007. That did not capture the retirement age of the dock workers, nor did it include the age limit of hiring dock workers. Management also highlighted that Labour Act was under review during the audit exercise and that the institution is working on privatizing the stevedoring at the ports of value. Furthermore, both management of GPA and the Internal Audit Department, who reports to the Board of Directors, confirmed that the aged workers are aware that they are not in the position when it comes to strength to carry out required work. Thus, most of them subcontract their position to younger people. In some cases, their sons and relatives to cover their shifts on their behalf. Then the recruitment is made in the name of the aged workers, who then agrees with the subcontractor on the percentage to be split. The graph below demonstrates the share of dock workers by age. As can be seen from the graph, 48% of the dock workers are 50 years and above. Only 20% is made up of the youth, and that is between 18 and 39 years of age. The graph has shown that almost half of the workforce is aged. Due to the aging workforce of the dock workers, which includes the stevedores, discharging cargoes, especially bulk, is not efficient. In addition, the subcontracted workers are put at risk as the insurance does not cover them, but instead covers those on the payroll. Furthermore, quality may be compromised with the subcontracted workers because they are not trained officially, nor are they officially on the GPA for disciplinary actions against inefficient and ineffective performance. Our conclusion: the stevedores operation at the ports of value is unable to optimally handle the amount of throughput coming due to the aging workforce. 80% of the workforce consists of age 40 and above, of which 18% has met the retirement age of 60, but still in the system. Furthermore, dock workers that are old and unable to cope with the requirement of the work have to resort to subcontracting family members or outsiders that are neither trained nor obliged to operate according to the Dog Labour Act of 2007. As they were not officially employed, those can lead to occupational hazards, as they are not covered by the insurance and can as well compromise the quality of service rendered. Recommendation: it is crucial that the Dog Labour Act is reviewed as soon as possible to suit the labour requirement of the ports. The Act should be in line with the general orders and should capture the retirement clause of retiring workers as soon as they are 60, thus depriving people of having a position in perpetuity. Once the Act is reviewed and updated, all the workers due for retirement should be laid off, and GPA should hire the required people who are capable of handling the responsibilities attached to the work. Management of GPA should forthwith address the issue of registered dock workers subcontracting, as this can lead to an occupational hazard and can very likely affect the quality of work rendered by the subcontractors, who are not trained and not employees of the ports. Lastly, most, if not all, the ports in the region are using stevedores of private companies in the form of private-public partnership. Thus, the management of GPA should consider a similar approach.
Management.
Thank you very much, Chair. 4.3, inefficient stevedoring services. Management is aware about the inherent weaknesses in the dock labor system and is implementing a new arrangement whereby a subsidiary cargo handling company is expected to be established by January 2022. The issue about subletting of tickets is usually among members within the register and has also been identified as one of the main reasons for low productivity due to the aging workforce. Noting that such issues emanated from a labor ordinance in 1963, before the establishment of the GPA, dock workers have had this notion of jobs for life, and due to the contending issues involved in industrial relations, the most pragmatic approach for holistic resolution of the perennial problems associated with the dock labor management, the requirement for improved performance to meet customer expectations and address the clamor for improved terms and conditions of employment by the dock workers union, can only be resolved with the proposed cargo handling company. Thank you.
4.4, lack of established supervision and monitoring mechanism. As a public service force, the Ports Authority owns the infrastructure and performs the complete range of services required for the functioning of the port system, which means that the authority owns, maintains, and operates all ports infrastructure, equipment, and port assets, including cargo handling. Hence, the port is a branch of government Ministry of Works, essentially making the government responsible for the formulation of policies, regulations, monitoring and supervision, fund facilitation, etc. During the audit exercise, we noted that the government of the Gambia neither issues performance contract to GPA as an SOE, nor does it set performance indicators for effective supervision and monitoring. The operation of GPA are only monitored by the internal audit unit and the audit committee, who reports to the board of directors. The performance of the ports is not measured, as the mechanisms to ensure such is not in place. Furthermore, the only monitoring mechanism in place is not active, as we have noted that the audit committee does not meet frequently. In 2019, not a single meeting was convened, and only 2 meetings were held in 2020, thus making these mechanisms dormant, affecting the monitoring and supervision function of the audit committee. In addition, a review of the board meeting minutes revealed that the internal audit reports, which bear salient and important lapses in the operations of the ports, were not frequently discussed by the board, and no actions were taken to ensure the findings in the internal audit reports were resolved. We have also noted that apart from the budget and audited financial statements and activity reports, no other monitoring and supervision reports are sent to the Ministry of Works, the line Ministry of GPA, Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, the custodians of the government collected revenue, and the National Assembly, which acts as a watchdog, ensuring the executive branch is prudent and efficient in providing public service to the citizenry. The set of documents or reports submitted are neither sufficient to inform the stakeholders about the performance of the post, nor does it create rooms for scrutiny and possible recommendations for improvement. The financial statement may reflect a good financial performance. This, however, cannot prove that the authority is economical, efficient, and effective. According to the management of GPA, the last performance contract signed between the government and GPA was in 2001, which begs the question as to how government can determine whether GPA is prudent, efficient, and effective. An interview with the Director of Internal Audit highlighted that the only monitoring mechanism in place is the Internal Audit Unit, which receives and reports to the Board of Directors quarterly. Which reviews and reports to the Board of Directors quarterly. Those reports are hardly discussed by the board, hence resulting in weaknesses in the system to be assisted. The absence of such mechanisms can compromise performance, as there are no set targets for the institution, and it makes it impossible for performance to be measured. Areas that need improvement may not be easily identified for improvement. In addition, the board not discussing on quarterly internal audit reports defeats the purpose of instituting that control mechanism in the first place, and it contributes to the weaknesses in the system, as actions will likely not to be taken to remedy the issues and strengthen the system. Conclusion. The monitoring mechanism in place are not adequately and effectively monitored the activities of GPA. The system in place are not robust enough to be able to set indicators, to be able to measure whether the report is prudent, efficient, and effective. The set of reports sent to the authorities, Ministry of Works, Finance, and National Assembly, are not comprehensive to indicate whether the post is performing to expectation, as mechanisms to ensure such are not in place. Recommendation. The importance of strong monitoring and supervision cannot be overemphasized. Thus, the line Ministry of GPA and other relevant authorities should ensure that there are adequate monitoring mechanisms for improved performance and effective service delivery to the citizenry. A performance contract should be agreed upon and signed between Ministry of Finance and GPA through the Ministry of Transport. Such a performance contract should include measurable indicators relating to the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. And the indicators should be monitored and measured regularly to ensure that lapses in the system are promptly identified and remedied. In addition, a comprehensive report of the assessment and evaluation of the set indicators should be prepared and sent to the Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Finance through the Board of Directors. Subsequently, the Ministry of Finance should equally endeavor to follow up on the achievements of the set indicators. The reports from the reviews should be published. Secondly, both the board and the audit committees should be consistent and regular in their meetings to discuss the internal audit reports, to follow up on implementation of their recommendations for improvement. The monitoring authority, NAMS, Finance, and Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Transport, during their reviews, should also follow up on the reports of the internal audit unit to ensure that issues raised are resolved.
Management.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. 4.4, lack of established supervision and monitoring mechanisms. The Audit Committee schedules quarterly meetings between the board meetings, but could not have met as required in 2019 due to the expiry of the tenure of the board as at then and the time lapse between the appointment of the new board by government. The minutes of the board audit committee meetings held are always reported to the board by the chairman of the committee, and board consideration and decisions thereto recorded in the minutes of the meeting of the board of directors. The Ministry of Finance, through the PPP Directorate, has engaged the authority with a view to reintroducing the performance contract system in 2022 for better monitoring of enterprise performance based on quantitative and qualitative targets to be agreed.
Next one.
4.5. Lack of legal framework and expertise to accommodate private sector participation in the course of buying, that is public-private partnership. Building and maintaining an efficient and effective force requires huge financial investment. Highly developed managerial skills coupled with sophisticated technological advancement, which the government of developing countries are mostly unable to shoulder due to other pressing development projects, such as healthcare and education. Consequently, great collaboration in this sector became necessary, and over the past decades, public-private partnerships have emerged as a mechanism to leverage greater public investment, participation in the post-development, and most importantly, to access specialized skills, innovation, technologies, and infrastructural development. In Africa, public-private partnerships have captured and transformed small ports into medium and large ports. This includes the ports of Tema, the ports of Douala, the ports of Cotonou, and the ports of Dakar. Private sector participation in the operations of the ports can be in various areas, ranging from terminal operations, stevedoring, building of infrastructure, provisions of machinery, to technological support. In the Gambia, this is however not the case. The country did not have the legal framework to attract public-private partnership, such as granting of concessions and other forms of public-private collaboration. The port of Banjul is one of the few ports in Africa that operates as a public sector port without a single aspect of its operations that is privatized or managed by the private sector. GPA owns the infrastructure and performs all the complete range of services required for the functioning of the port system, including cargo handling, numerous investments. Both national and international companies have shown interest collaborating with GPA, but none of them were successful. A classical example is a proposal of DP World, a company from Dubai, to build ports, operate and transfer it at an average period, which was unsuccessful, resulting in the company approaching the ports of Dakar, where they are currently operating and contributing significantly to the transformation of the ports of Dakar. Today, the port of Dakar is ranked as one of the most performing ports in the sub-region. According to the management of GPA, the environment that should make it possible to venture into such partnership is not in place, and there are also deficiencies in the negotiation skills in this area. Thus, the legal framework and the required skill set or capacity should be instituted before this is possible. Management also highlighted that PPP unit under the Ministry of Finance has initiated drafting a PPE Act, which when finalized will get the ball rolling, making it possible to have both national and international investors venture into certain operations of the ports. The absence of a legal framework and the required expertise in negotiating and issuing concessions and other PPP agreements have limited the private sector participation in the operations of the ports of Banjul, which has to a large extent deprived the need for collaboration of the private sector. It is not reasonable to believe that GPA can, in isolation from the private sector, operate the ports efficiently and effectively due to the required resources. For example, the Post Master Plan 2019 to 2024 highlighted that the permanent solution needed to resolve the challenges of the ports is to relocate the ports, which will require an amount of around $500 million, which GPA or government could not fund, resulting in them coming up with a short-term solution that will require lesser finances Thus, if all the required mechanisms were in place, such solution could have been easily implemented with the collaboration of the private sector. In addition, the limited berthing space, unavailability of gantry cranes, limited terminal space, plant availability, stevedoring, and others are major impediments that could have been remedied with the inclusion of the private sector to provide the required financial resources, managerial expertise, and technological support, which would have enhanced the performance of the ports, contributing to its comparative advantage within the sub-region. Furthermore, the private sector participation would not only improve port performance, but would have increased employment opportunities in the sector, increased tax revenue, skills transfer, and many other benefits that would have spurred socio-economic development. Our conclusion: the mechanisms needed for private sector participation in the port's operation are not in place. The government of the Gambia has failed to develop the required legal framework and expertise in the area amidst private sector interest in participating in the sector. Government has for the longest time been aware that it is unable to fund the maintenance of the ports, nor is the proceeds of GPA enough to maintain optimally its operations. Yet, government preferred the lobbying of the unsustainable development loans and grants to private sector inclusion. This has hindered the efficient and effective port operations, affected potential employment opportunities in the area, as well as revenue generation. Our recommendation: to attract and accommodate private sector participation in the operations of the ports, it is paramount that the system, legal and administrative framework, which are the pillars and foundation, are strongly built. Firstly, management of DPA in collaboration with its land ministry should conduct a comprehensive review of the legal and regulatory framework governing the port sector in order to determine whether amendments to existing laws, that is DPA Act and regulation, may be necessary or whether new legislation is required to accommodate the private sector. In addition, the PPP unit of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs should, with urgency, complete the drafting of the PPP policy framework and ensure that all the required steps are taken promptly to put in motion. The public-private partnership policy framework should be extensive enough to be able to address and mitigate risk involved in such partnership. Secondly, there is a need to identify and mobilize basic administrative and technical resources to prepare and manage public-private partnership to ensure that the country gains the most from PPE negotiations. In negotiating private sector participation, the right port model has to be chosen. According to the World Bank, there are 4 main ports management models: public service ports, tool ports, landlord ports, and private services ports. Most ports, especially in developing countries, are now using the landlord ports model, where the port authority acts as a regulatory body, while port operations, especially cargo handling, are carried out by private companies. And infrastructure, particularly terminal, are leased to private operating companies. This type of model requires a broad set of legal, managerial, and technical capacities, which are not in place. Thus, this may be applicable in the future. However, in the near future, the tool post model can also be considered and can be used as a transition from the public service post model to a landlord post model, as done in many countries. Under the tool post model, cargo handling on board vessels and the quay is carried out by private cargo handling or stevedoring firms, while terminal equipment such as cranes, trailers, spreaders, forklifts, trucks, and infrastructure are managed by the port authority. Since the management of DPA is on the verge of privatizing stevedoring, thus that in line with the ports, the tool post model, hence management is going to pursue that project with urgency. Other aspects of such infrastructure and equipment which requires huge capital investment and technical expertise can also be studied, researched, and if feasible, can also privatized with the right tools and framework in place.
Management.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 4.5, lack of legal framework and expertise to accommodate private sector participation in the ports of banking, public-private partnership in banking. The notion that DP World's proposal to the GPA being unsuccessful, resulting to the firm approaching the port of Dakar, should be treated in the context that while the GPA was based on an unsolicited offer, the case of Dakar was by way of public tender. Improved performance as a result of private concession also needs to be reviewed against the increased business, cost effectiveness of the services being provided, and benefits to the lessor. However, it is a known fact that private capital is a game changer in all of the port ownership and management models across the sub-region, and the GPA cannot be left out. The institutional framework that will guide private participation in port management and operations is being provided with the formulation of the PPP law, which can reliably be reported that is at the drafting stage, while government is also soliciting grant funding through African Development Bank and the African Legal Support Facility for PPP transaction advisory services, technical assistance, and training on PPP negotiation skills and strategies. The review of the Ports Act 1972 has already been set in motion following a board decision on same, and the GPA in-house legal officer is tasked to prepare the necessary engagement with all the relevant stakeholders to see the process through the Attorney General's chambers, Cabinet, and subsequently assent by the National Assembly. The process is expected to be completed during 2022. The decision to improve the port within its present location in Banjul is based on the demand study for the next 20 years, that is 2019 to 2030, as opposed to the proposal for its relocation to the southern coastline, as the forecast in terms of volume does not make a strong business case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Auditor General.
Yes, we have come to the end of the presentation.
Honorable Chair. Thank you very much, members. The review exercise of the performance audit on cargo handling of the Gambia Port Authority is complete. Now the members have the mandate to raise any point that needs further elucidation so that we'll be able to gather all the facts necessary to be able to prepare a report for the plenary. In summary, we've been informed that the Gambia Port Authority has 4 options in terms of operations. Its future can be public service port, tool port, land load port, or private service port. As it stands, the port facility is seen as a sovereign asset. What you do with sovereign asset is a question of itself. It's a policy issue. Maybe we should be able to engage the two ministries, finance, and works later on to deal with that particular issue. Get the policy direction that ultimately will determine what force ultimately becomes. But the Auditor General is concerned with addressing challenges. And the challenges are very clear to us. That the major source of business, core business, is vessel calls and cargo handling. Cargo handling will require vessels to dock somewhere, and from that quay, they are telling us that they must move to berth so that they can offload their cargo. They're telling us that because of congestion, the dock at the quay takes a lot of time before the vessels will move to berth in order to offload. And that the process of offloading requires cranes. There is absence of modernity of equipment, and there is also shortage of enough of them. To the point that vessels bring their own equipment to facilitate offloading. But according to them, that is getting out of fashion, and sooner or later, that is going to be history. We have been informed that the debt, as well as the size that requires berthing, is still not up to standard. Because the vessels that require to dock are much larger, and they require deeper waters to be able to do so. So such issues will require, according to them, investment to be able to address them. There are problems, but they require investment. They have told us that at the level of offloading, you offload on a terminal, and you've seen the size of the terminals that exist and the number of containers at the moment that are required satisfactorily to contain. From 900 containers, you have 1,500, they call it congestion. 900 containers, and you have 1,200 with less square meters design, you still have congestion. So they are seeing congestion at that level. They've also told us very much that when the containers leave the ports, they should be returned. And when they are returned, there is no space to stack them. So they've been developing systems of stacking. And now that is also leading to more congestion. So the end result of all this, according to them, is the time that a vessel should dock, berth, offload, and then return with containers is taking too long. They are gauging the time and comparing the standards. Now you can ask, they talk to you about 5 days for some, etc. So they're making comparative analysis. So maybe from this you may ask so that we can know what is the best standard? What is the most efficient? And why are they efficient? So that we have an understanding of what ought to be done. What is very clear is the impact that private resource is having in terms of the earning capacity of ports. Currently, the usage of land, private land, instead of land owned by ports, is incurring cost. According to them, the cost cannot be justified because the use is not commensurate to the cost management. Is questioning, so I think those are salient issues that you need to look into so that we know very clearly those institutions and how ports intend to move in the future and how it is utilizing them to be economical, to be financially viable. Members, I think that is the summary that could be given, and we open up the floor for any of you who wishes to zero in and raise the vital questions so that we get the information that we require. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I just want to take them to page 38 on importers paying congestion fees and demolition.
Page
Page 38.
38.
Page 38 says
Management.
B, where it says importers paying congestion fees and demolition. If you go for the inside, it says that major importers like Yahweh, George Brown, and others have highlighted that they were compelled to lose thousands of dollars on demolition charges to the above congestions and other inefficiencies at the port of Banjul. This has contributed to the skyrocketing prices in essential commodities in the Gambia, as the cost of congestion fees and demolition are added to the shipping cost of the businessmen, who would also spread it and add it to the price of the commodities. Since more than half of the Gambian population is categorized to be within the poor bracket, skyrocketing prices on essential commodities like food is a threat to the country's food sufficiency, as many may not be able to afford these essential commodities. And then if you just go further, where you have a management response, you told us that the GPA, where you have the GPA has commissioned a new master plan, 2019 to 2028. And then all this master plan is as a result of finding a solution to what is happening right now. It doesn't seem that we don't have a solution to what is happening in our markets now. Because looking at this report, it's telling you also that there is a cost for all these skyrocketing of prices in the market. It is a result of the demolition that the businessmen are paying, and they will charge it on us. So what are you doing as a management of the GPA, board and management of GPA, in order to find a solution to this in action as possible?
Management.
Thank you, Honorable Member, for that question. At the time the response was prepared, it was to address the capacity constraint to deal with the congestion issue. But immediately what the management is doing is there are operational efficiency improvement measures which are being taken to ensure that ships' productivity is increased. Now, one of the major steps that is being taken is to access areas outside of the port which are owned by private occupants. And the idea is to allow, rather than leasing or renting, permit to operate an inland terminal, as happens in other countries. So we are in the business of engaging the owners with the shipping lines and the customs authorities with a view to finding an interim measure, such that all this activity that has human interface can be moved away from the port, allow us the port some little bit more room so that we can handle ships' productivity with an improved level. But the demurrage that is being mentioned here from these bulk importers has to do with the ships that are chartered and not congestion surcharge per se. But they pay demurrage. It's like chartering a vehicle for 3 days and then you end up using it for 5 days. The extra 2 days has to be paid for extra. Now that is the what is happening. But related to that also is the fact that the cost of doing business in Gambia has increased as a result of two major elements, which is the freight cost to Banjul and also the cost of price of oil internationally. Maybe not too specifically related to what GPA can control, but these are also some of the things that contribute to the increasing cost of doing business in Gambia. And recently also there are other agencies that are involved in the goods clearance process that also levy charges, which all add up together. Us being the custodian and where goods are cleared, I mean, it's the name of the GPA that features as the main cause of all the congestion and the related charges that cause increase in price of goods. Typically, new charges are levied by Gambia Maritime Administration, Food Safety Authority, and then there's this reintroduction of the 20% reduction by DRA. So all this added together can mean increased cost of doing business. Notwithstanding, the GPA has its own share, which is the congestion. And as you rightly mentioned, measures have been taken interim to improve efficiency so that ship stay import can be reduced to minimize the congestion and the
Have you taken into consideration the page, the number referred to, page 36?
Yes, Honorable. It was on page 38 on B.
Well, look at page 36. That's where the challenge came. He's saying major importers like JA Oil, George Banner, and others have highlighted that they were compelled to lose thousands of dollars on demurrage charges due to the berthing congestion. So that's what the member is saying. Do you agree with that? If so, what is really the solution to this? Because they are saying, they added that this has contributed to skyrocketing prices in essential commodities. So what is the correlation between demurrage charges and the skyrocketing prices? So it's just that element. Is there a linkage? Is there a correlation? Is that an impact? And if so, how much impact? 10%, 5%, 20% in price increases? And what do you intend to do about that? Because they feel it's the congestion, is the delay in birth.
Thank you, Honorable. I have noted the observation and the comments made by these two major importers. And it is right that the congestion is a contributing factor to the cost of doing business on the side of the importer. Because demurrage is charged when ships stay longer than the charter party. So it depends on the charter party that these importers have with the ship owners and also the amount of lay time that is allowed for demurrage to be charged. But it is true that the congestion would lead to ships staying longer than necessary and ultimately to demurrage charges.
He's asking, what do you intend to do?
Well, one has to really look at each individual data party and do further analysis so that it can apportion quantify what element in the demurrage is causing this increase in the cost of doing business in Gambia. That can with certainty determine what level the impact the demurrage is having on the retail prices of goods. So I'm saying it is confirmed that the congestion leads to demurrage, and the demurrage is increasing the cost of doing business in Gambia.
Yes, board and management, what I want to ask here is that before coming here, don't you think that you have enough time to furnish us with such information? Enough research that will determine the number of the amount of money increased on this demurrage, the correlation between it and the business that is happening. Like you said, it's written. You have to do a research and to know that the reason why business has skyrocketed as a result of this demurrage. How many questions as Honorable asked?
The member is asking, after receiving this audit performance report, have board and management sat down to look at these core issues and then undertake to begin to look at them systematically to start to find out exactly as you said, do the research to see the impact and what impact on prices on the public. If that has not been done, would management not see the need to actually do that after receiving such reports, to do an assessment and then use that assessment as a template for your own operations? That's what the member is asking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the question by the honorable member. As a port, we are looking at the congestion issues. And for that, as we've seen from the report, they raised the issue of the stevedoring. As you can see from the report, they've raised the issue of the stevedoring and the space constraint at the port. So what we demonstrate, that is based on the fact that we have congestion, and that some of these shipping lines over the years, they've increased their tariffs for moving containers around the world. It is a known fact. From $1,500 per container to now almost $5,000. So those are established, those are exogenous to the port. We cannot do that. What we've tried to address as a board is the congestion issue. And for that, the stevedoring we've looked at by trying to set up a private company to do the stevedoring. Because there are no other labor-related issues, as he has mentioned, that is beyond the control of the board or the port for that matter. Because the labor laws were a constraint to us. That's why we found a solution through establishing a private stevedoring firm, which would be in close collaboration with the dock workers. It would be like a company that they will share, but that would be outside our purview now, but they would operate strictly on private.
Just to guide the process, Chair,
Yeah.
I think the question that he is asking is really protecting the public interest, that prices are increasing by virtue of, I hate to use the word, inefficiency of GPA, by creating a congestion that nobody can explain what GPA. I think you understand the point.
Yeah, I understand.
But then if that is the case, is GPA undertaking, or will it be willing to undertake to find out how that inefficiency, what percentage contributes to price increases, and see whether it can even do something about that? You know, it can be done by simply saying, well, you will not charge for your own inefficiency so that you do not impact. I'm just generalizing. Or that it will solve the problem so that there will be no inefficiency in the first place.
Okay, before I hand over to the MD, I think I can add that the commission of the board of the port includes the peers from finance and trade as well as works. So, and Chamber of Commerce. So together, we can work towards putting our finger on exactly what's going on. So I guess I can add that. But in the meantime, I can pass it on to
Thank you very much. I think that is good enough answer. Member is saying they don't have it in place, but they are willing to explore. Any yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to ask management on that issue, because according to the report, it talked about private-public partnership, which outsiders and even maybe Gambians are willing to come. I'm just asking whether you don't think in that direction, so that at least you can open up to such people so that they can come, they invest. At the end of the day, you gain something that you are losing at the moment. I said I just want them to punish whether they are not thinking in that direction.
So that's an opinion rather than a question. Oh.
It's a question. I want them to punish us, to tell us if they are thinking in
What direction are they thinking?
Yeah.
So the direction of your thinking on Port Authority.
Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Member, for that question. The GPA, our decision factor, is guided by a master plan that we commissioned. And it was prepared by Royal Hospital and submitted to government in July 2019. They looked at the alternative location of the Port of Banjul and its development in its current location. And they came to the primary conclusion that there is a strong business case for the port to remain under public ownership, do the immediate investment to expand the infrastructure, and then work towards having the private sector come and complement the soft part. And us as a management, we endorse that recommendation, and that's what we encourage government to consider in cabinet, and the decision was cabinet granted approval. So not that we are not saying no to private sector, but we want to take care of our immediate infrastructure investment, because there's a strong business case that the balance sheet of the port can guarantee an incorporated loan to do the immediate investment, increase the value of the asset, and then invite the private sector for the software part, because the port is doing well for government and the country. So rather than transfer public monopoly to a private monopoly, this is our strategy, and we are aligned to that. But in considering the access to the funding, there are challenges. So the option of PPP is still on the cards, as the board had a meeting, and we are looking at the 3 funding options. Either to go for a corporate loan, or to go with the commercial banks, or a concessionary loan from the development partners, like ODAs, and consider the PPP option. But us as a board, we are aligned to our business plan and the master plan, and the recommendation is for investment in improve the infrastructure immediately between 2019 and 2023, and our balance sheet to guarantee the loan that is taken for this investment.
What I want to ask is management.
Let's give supplemental.
Yeah, no, it's supplementary.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, what I want to ask the board and management is that, because you talk about food, we all know when citizens are hungry, it's always a problem. So as a management and board, you say that you wanted to have a meeting with all the board members in order to discuss about this issue. Can you tell us the time frame that you want to conduct this meeting? Because this is an emergency and we need to solve it.
Thank you, Honorable. We will do an exercise immediately. And I cannot take any commitment at the top of my head, but I think reasonably within a month, we should be able to do the exercise to come up with an analysis, because it involves a lot of actors and information finding. Because, for example, importers may have to do full disclosure about their charter partner, because you have to verify what is in the contract between the importer and the ship owner to determine what is the lay-by time, what is allowed for rain, delay, or public holidays, and what is now accrued as demurrage. Then we can be able to put our fingers to say with certainty that this particular consignment for this importer, this is the amount of demurrage that is accrued. But we can reasonably expect that the margin for CIF goods into Gambia, which was done by a transport observatory, is nothing more than 17% of the total cost from factory to warehouse.
So you will take it as an issue,
Certainly.
this audit exercise issue.
Chairman, let me also add that we already have in this report the importers that have raised this issue of demurrage. So we're going back to them. And for them to also disclose, because they're just showing one side of the story. So with the help of our colleagues from trade and finance, we should be able to do something within the next month. It could be earlier, like we used to be on the spot now, but we didn't take it as our responsibility to actually prove the fact that it is because of demurrage and congestion that the prices are high, skyrocketing. We were thinking the auditors will go deeper and actually get the other side of the story. But we can complete this process and put something on.
So we are expecting a post-performance audit response. Thank you. The question that the member also asked is the future direction. So is that future direction being shaped by the real needs of GPA, or is it just being shaped by policy? Is it GPA checking what is already indicated to be its shortcomings and mapping out what are the priorities and what it has the capacity to do and what it must rely on somebody else to give partnership to do? Has that really been identified? Do you really know what the major shortcomings are, and have you prioritized them, and have you identified what you are capable of doing and what ought to be done with relation with others?
Certainly, Honorable Chair. It was done, as I mentioned earlier, in a business plan that we commissioned as a result of the master plan. The master plan looked at the 2019-2038 20-year demand forecast. Alongside the master plan, a business plan was prepared 2019-2023, and it identified 3 urgent components that the port should invest in to increase its capacity. One, and first and foremost, is the expansion of the jetty for the ship's accommodation by 345 meters northward of its present location, and the estimate is about $60 million US. The second and most important, equally important, is the conversion of the half-dry area to be acquired. This is the contiguous zone to be port, to expand the container terminal by another 22,000 square meters thereabout. The estimate from previous project funding is about $8 million. And then the third component is to invest in port digitization, because we're reaching volumes where to bring efficiency in cargo handling, we need IT-based solutions. So these are the 3 components that the business plan has identified and recommended that it will, one, address the immediate increased demand on the facility, increase the asset base of the authority, and also enhance our negotiation, give us an advantage when we want to negotiate with a private partner. It means all the hard infrastructure will have been done with the port, our balance sheet to guarantee, and then the private guys will come now and do the softer part and the management services.
You may want to ask before I go with it. I'll raise more questions on that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Board and management, the MD has just informed us that they are trying to utilize in the IT-based solution. If you go to page 29, we are informed that examination and scanning of these containers. And if you look at the report, the auditors inform us that they prepared this report based on interview, document review, and site visits. And I would like to ask the board and the management. We know that you inform us that physical verification was done when it comes to these containers. What about the issue of the scanning?
Thank you, Honorable Member. The scanning operations is outside of the GPA's remit. It's purely Gambia Revenue Authority, customs operation. So we just house the facility, as it were, within our premises. Because as you may understand, that the port is a customs zone. So for all cargo leaving the port area, it has to go through that examination. So it's really a GRA operation. We just house it, the facility, and provide the space necessary, but it's entirely at the control of the Gambia Revenue Authority.
Ports is important, when we take that on board in your answer. It is affecting GPA in terms of the delay. That's what the auditors are saying. So have you sat down with all these stakeholders to synchronize what is the most efficient way of doing this so that they will not delay the process? Has that been done? And if it has not been done, would that be undertaken? Because that's part of effectiveness and efficiency. Whatever operation is really affecting your swift implementation of this return of the vessels is a matter for you to take into consideration.
Okay. At the board level, I should also share the fact that GRA Director General is a member of the board of GPA. So the resolution of this fact, I noticed that after scanning, or we have to strip the containers before scanning, which is in terms of process, it is inefficient. The scanning was to avoid stripping containers. when it's only you strip only to confirm, and that is you cannot do it on every container. You select, randomly, and then you check how the system works. But now, from what I've seen from this audit, is that they strip only containers and then scan, which is not taking advantage of the technology of introducing scanning. So we will have to look at that process, because that can cause a lot of delay, and it involves all this NIA and whatever process that we have there, which is, I don't see it's not adding any value to the process.
Okay, if I may add, Honorable Speaker, Chair, with your permission. The containers that are done 100% integration are containers with heterogeneous cargo, like multiple bills of lading in one container, with bicycles, household goods, and used effect. But cargo, if it is homogeneous in nature, maybe 50 containers in one single bill, GRA will normally do random scanning. That we know. But for containers with multiple owners of goods in a container, like mostly household goods, GRA will always insist on the security apparatus to do 100% physical examination. To your question, how this can be avoided? In a normal setting, because the space is not available to them, all the activity that has human interference is normally placed away from the main terminal. So what happens in normal ports is you have a portal, like a portal scanner type, where the vehicles from the ship side will just drive on them, and the images are captured. Containers are taken at the stacking area. There is no human interference. So when consignees come for clearance, those containers are moved now maybe at the back of the port or in an off-dock site where all this activity can be done. But the port proper is left without any human interference between the ship and the terminal site. But because of the lack of space, that's why these activities are all condemned. But what we are doing immediately, as I mentioned earlier, is to get this license to operate, to be allowed to individuals, so that this activity will be moved away from the port.
Now, what do you think is the solution to that?
Additional space to be acquired, and then all activity that has human interference, like clearing cargo, used vehicles, be moved away from the port in an inland terminal.
Okay. You talk about the issue of scanning is GRA, and if you go to page 39, slowing down the revenue collections, we know that government is an intelligence, ministry, department, and agencies. Does this slowing down the revenue collection, does it have any impact on GPA?
Yes, certainly. It slows down, because what happens is it limits the capacity that we can handle in terms of turnover in business processes. Because the less ships we handle, the less cargo, less revenue, all as a result of the congestion. Because if we are able to handle ships faster, it means our volume of transactions will increase, and thus the revenue. So certainly, yes, it has a correlation.
MD, my question is, this issue of scanning, and as you have mentioned in your intervention that you are trying to go digital in the IT world solution, this issue of scanning has direct impact to GPA, because this can make the congestion of the port premises in regards to the storage facility you are talking about. Because if the scanning is not correct and the containers are not moving, do you think that the issue of the storage facility will be affected?
No, I agree with you, Honorable, that the scanning also delays our processes. But that's why we're suggesting that the short to medium term is to move this activity away from the port, so that there will be no interference. The port will be left just to handle ships for discharging or for loading. And then all activity that is less time sensitive can be moved at the back of the layout of the terminal or off dock, as happens in other countries. Usually there's what we call inland container network, where all these activities take place, and not within the terminal, at least close to the deck.
So you are undertaking then both that you will look into this as a major priority in ensuring that this separation is done for the ports to be free. That's one priority you will put into operation.
Actually, negotiations are at an advanced stage with the port users, that's the shipping lines, the GPA, the GRA, and the owner of this facility. Because the requirements of all of these actors has to be met before the license to operate is being considered for granting.
Secondly, you talk about more sophisticated means of scanning. Well, have you put it as part of your plan to discuss with GRA to see whether such an equipment could be purchased to facilitate the process?
Well, we have taken note of it because it involves engagement with a sister government agency. But what is known to have been reliably reported is that in 2002, the port had indeed made an attempt to procure the scanner and then allow GRA to use it, because it's mostly GRA and the other security apparatus that are more beneficial when it comes to scanning. Because us as a port, we are a handling agency. We just handle consent to contain. Farm to contain is the role of the other sister government agencies. That's why they are more of relevance with this kind.
Well, indeed, that's why we are saying it is affecting you.
Yes.
You may not be the one in charge, but it is affecting you. We are asking, are you ready now to cooperate with them to see whether this advanced solution can be pursued?
In fact, during the board meeting we had last week, the issue came up, and the board is putting up a position to engage the relevant authorities, like the chairman alluded to, with a view to finding a common consensus. But the board will allow to take the lead as part of our infrastructure that we own and deploy a scanner to facilitate operations.
Thank you very much.
What do we think that our lyrics of fund for using this state committee to all of us? 35. Lyrics of value for using this to a competitors or competitiveness to other competitors. Thank you, according to the auditors, they revealed that from discussions conducted with importers, it has highlighted that most of them are considered using the port of Senegal, Dakar. And this was even amplified by the shipping lines also. Zakiaman, I think this is a risk and it was interviewed. What is the management doing to make sure that this issue is averted so that the ports, these importers who want to shift their attention to Senegal can be retained? Well, this is very important to your revenue and the revenue from GIA also. Because if these people shift their operation to Senegal, you will lose revenue. The GIA will lose revenue, the country itself will lose revenue. So what are you doing? This is a serious thing to me, to make sure that this problem is solved, so that these importers and civilians will remain in Ghana, and you can even attract some countries also. And going back to your response here, I think you have mentioned by page 13 that you consider a master plan in 2019 and 2028, and a business plan of 2019 to 2023. And this includes, I think, improvement of the infrastructure, and which deals with the issue I'm talking about. So what are you doing? Have we started implementing this master plan? And if yes, to what level are you?
All right, thank you. Maybe to the first question, the first part about the threat of losing business. We are aware that there's this threat, and what we've done is we've sent out a team to do a market survey at the land borders to determine what cargo is bound for Banjul and is transiting through Dakar. What we know that is evident is that used vehicles, that is second-hand cars, are coming by road transit from Dakar that are bound for Banjul. These are some of the vehicles. Yes, these are some of the vehicles that are found around Benton Bridge. What is the incentive is one of the main operators of these second-hand cars, they call it Roro vehicle, it's called Grimali Line, and they have a concession in Dakar, a big terminal. So when they deploy these vessels to Africa, they do like Europe to Dakar Accord and bring, for example, 5,000 units. These 5,000 units are all dumped in Dakar because it's their own vessel and their own terminal. So they will now deploy another smaller vessel to do port-to-port port. So when rates are quoted from Europe to Dakar for a vehicle, it's 400 euros. But this same vehicle, if you are quoted to Banjul direct, it's 800 euros. So that's the difference. Shipping direct to Banjul and shipping by Dakar. But all the other costs that are added in the overland transit are yet to be determined. When it comes to importers also transiting bound for via Dakar, we will include it as part of the study. But for us in the business, we have done our market intelligence in a subtle way, but we are yet to be informed about the figures. What we have noticed is there's a certain type of commodity that is involved in transiting via Dakar to Banjul. So we are yet to do our investigations to find out really what is the motivation. So we are doing further survey to analyze, because if you see a specific type of cargo only being transited over land via Dakar using the Trans-Gambia Bridge, because it's faster to get to Banjul, maybe in 20 days from China, rather than shipping direct to Banjul 45 days. And only one specific type of cargo is involved. We are going to do further investigation to find out really what is the origin, destination, and the goods involved. Then we'll be able to ascertain why, or establish a pattern. But we know the risk is there. In terms of the master plan implementation, as I mentioned earlier, in 2019 July, Cabinet approved the corporate loan. So the GPA was well advanced in negotiation with an international lender called the Africa Finance Corporation. Only for mid-2020, for the Ministry of Finance to be engaged, because they have to support the transaction. But they advised that we opt for a more concessionary funding through European Investment Bank and African Development Bank. So that was why there was this delay. But we have a milestone that we said if we abort the road with the international lender, which we are going to use our balance sheet to guarantee the loan. Now the challenge with the DFIs is they have to respect the milestones we set ourselves in terms of timeline. But that is not achievable under the circumstances because a lot of preparatory works are needed to be done. But as we speak, there is an ADD mission in country. And what we have done is the environmental social impact assessment is a requirement before you go to tender for the contractors to know the design about the environment. That we have signed with a company in India, and we expect within 6 months to get the results. The other bit that we have done is we have done a pre-qualification for the construction contractors. 18 international firms have bid, and we are working with a consultant called Royal Hospital, the one that prepared the master plan, to come up with a short list of 6. And then we now use the environmental study, invite these 6 to prepare a full design for the jetty extension. For the container terminal, we are handling internally and our relocation of our head office. We are going to tender to do a preliminary cost estimate and design. What we have agreed with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Transport in the presence of our chairman, this happened just last week, is that there's increased pressure on the facility. And we have a business plan that we want to stick to. So now if we have been stopped from taking the loan from the international lender, now the option of the DFIs is also causing us delay. Can someone in government or the Ministry of Finance guarantee that once we do all our preparatory activities, the funds will be available? And from that meeting, I think the commitment was in the positive, that let GPA continue with our preparatory activities. Once we are ready to go to drive the first pipe, the money will be available. So this is what we are doing already.
So, I think you are telling exactly for the master plan from 2019 to date, actually nothing has been done.
Well, no, a lot has been done. Like, for example, the new container terminal where it is to be built. Yeah. This is a compound about 22,000 square meters of area that is contiguous to the port zone. It's just along our fence. 80% of the properties have already been acquired and paid for. But part of the compensation includes for the owners of these properties to be given an alternative plot of land in Bakau Kachikan, because this was seized as a result of government decision in 1993.
Yes, you know what the auditors have said. You are purchasing, you are leasing, but you are not using. So money is being invested, but the benefits are not coming. So do you see the contradiction? How do you intend to operate to ensure that what you purchase would go to serve the interest for which you purchased the property? Or what you lease will serve that? Because otherwise you'll be spending money but still the problem persists.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. For the 2 lands that we lease in Bonro, One of them is to expire this month, and there is no intention to continue with the lease because the arrangements are to change with the license to operate being granted. So we'll absolve ourselves from that responsibility of having to lease. The other property is being leased for extension for 1 year. We have intentions to discontinue the lease once we access this GTTI and the Muslim high school, which is very well advanced. GTTI has already been acquired and the property demolished. Now we are negotiating with the school authorities in Muslim to have access to that area. So that's the area we earmarked to relocate our office and then leave some of the area for storage. The area that is contiguous to Half-Time is 22,000 square meters. So all these parcels of land we're trying to now acquire so that we'll go away from this lease.
So when do you think the exercise will be completed? What's your target? That by this date you will get this land and issue of land will be history.
Middle of this year, Honorable Chair, it's reasonable to have expectation because the Muslim is almost complete. They have like only 2 properties are remaining, and the board last week has engaged government through Ministry of Lands and Justice to assist in the process. Otherwise, the option is to demolish what we have acquired and leave those properties like to box them out of the area.
Supplementary.
Well, and the backup compensation also.
Go ahead.
Let us give us a report for the implementation of the master plan and the
Okay, you're on the master plan.
and the business plan.
Business plan. Go ahead. You want?
The implementation.
Yes.
Report.
Yes, he's saying the stages of implementation of the master plan.
We can make a
Business
available.
plan.
That is readily available.
He's saying the stages of implementation.
Yes.
You know, if you look at page 36, you're actually saying consultancies by 2021. You establish a framework. So are you in 2022? Okay, go ahead, I'll get to that. You've already told us that you are at an advanced stage. Yes, it's here. You are saying the exercise is expected to commence October 2021. Has that commenced in 2021? Secondly, that's page 38. And then you said that, well, the pre-qualification of construction contractors has also been launched, and the deadline for submission is Friday, 8 October 2021. Has that actually happened? And you also said that this procurement letter is being launched parallel to ESIA in order to gain lead time for the next phase of the tender for the firm to be shortlisted such that the project is expected to start in the first quarter of 2022. Are you on target?
On the project start date, we are 6 months in delay as far as the first quarter of 2022 is concerned. But the prior 2 activities, which is the ESIA and the shortlisting has been achieved. Because we are working with European Investment Bank. So at every stage in the process, we require their no objection. So we've done the...
Can you give us the
rundown? Okay.
Submit that.
All right.
Okay, members.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Mine is still a supplementary question in regards to what you have said about the imported vehicles that are coming and the reason why they are coming through Senegal. Would you agree to this that this is not only about imported vehicles, but even the containers coming into this country are going to the neighboring countries?
Okay. Thank you, Honorable. As I mentioned earlier, we are yet to lay our hands on the empirical data. What we have done is we've done a market intelligence. For the vehicles, we know with certainty and we have the figures. But for containerized cargo coming through the borders, it's not the physical containers that are coming through Dakar and into Banjul. But containerized cargo, meaning the containers will be dropped in Dakar. The goods demand from the container and then loaded onto trucks and transported overland into Banjul. This is what we are monitoring. But we are collaborating with our partners, the GRA, to get the information at the border crossing point. What we have noticed is that a specific type of cargo is involved. So we are yet to go to the bottom of it and establish if our assumptions are right, then it will mean that maybe a pattern is established. Then we can say with definitiveness that this is what is happening with cargo that is bound for Banjul but transiting through Dhaka.
Yes, it's good to have empirical evidence, as you say. Yes, but I just want to give you this information that what you have said, that's what is going on. And I am privy to that information. But also, I want to inform you that containers are coming directly from Senegal and they are coming into this country. And I believe you should collaborate with GRA to make sure that that issue is addressed.
Point noted, Honorable.
Yes.
Right, go ahead.
All right. I just want to have a quick questions I want to ask the MD. My first one is, MD, as a DBA, you always pay a dividend to the government as your contributions. But yet still, you are complaining as a lack of finance in order to run some of your projects. Do you really think that it makes any difference to pay a dividend to the government whilst you are crying out for something? Okay, that's my first question. And then the other one also is, don't you really think that we are now losing our business to Senegal? Because when you say a car going to Senegal is 400 euros, compared to one coming here 800 euros, you are talking about the difference of 400 euros. Do you think that we are not losing our business to Senegal? If yes, what are you doing? Because I think we need to find a solution, a quick solution to this. Because if I can quickly take you to your plan, your master plan. If you looked at
the questions are, so first you are talking about the dividend. I think we leave that out. That's what you were suggesting.
Yeah.
Or do you still want them to tell you that they will not want to pay dividend? Okay. Because I'm sure they will not want to pay dividend. But you wish the second question?
yeah,
What is the second
the
question?
comparison that the cost of a vehicle, Senegal and Ghana is there.
Yes. So could you give him the assessment, proper assessment? Have you really, as the member said, have you really done a study to know the quantity and type of goods that are coming from Senegal and exploiting the port facilities in Senegal purely because of efficiency issues? Have you done a study? If not, wouldn't it be prudent to do such a study?
Thank you, Honorable. It would be prudent to do such a study. But what we have right now is just statistics on the vehicles that are coming to Banjul via Dakar. And the reason I explained is because of the operator has his own dedicated facility in Dakar. That's why they can afford to use big ships and bring 5,000 units that are meant for a range of ports. And then when they come to Dakar, they deploy another smaller vessel to do now a port-to-port call. Take the odd 400 to maybe Banjul, Conakry, Freetown, in that order. So that's why when they quote freight to Banjul for a used vehicle and freight to Dakar for a used vehicle, Dakar would be cheaper by 50% because of this incentive. But the way forward is to enhance our port capacity and also create a rural terminal so that these same operators can be invited to take concession of part of the area and bring these feeder vessels to motherships to Banjul so that we can also be as a feeder.
Yes. Still, the question is not answered. Have you or are you ready to undertake that study so that there is empirical evidence to know what is actually being offloaded in Dakar and why? Because we are all speculating that your congestion is driving the vessels away. But you are also telling us 30% of the export trade provides GRA revenue and 20% of foreign exchange. So some people are using you still to re-export. So what is this scenario of efficiency and resorting to this port or to that port? So don't you see the need for a study, a comprehensive study to inform opinion?
Certainly, Honorable Chair, as you rightly mentioned, we will include as part of the information, the research on the demo rate. We'll also include why vehicles are now being shipped to Dakar with all the volume and the cost and all the overland transport costs involved so that one can come to a definitive conclusion on what are the causes, the impact, and what can we do to mitigate. You're right, Honorable Chair. Maybe that's the next step we need to do.
Yes. All right.
Thank you. Sorry. Board of Management, could we please turn to page 41? The auditors inform us that the property situated along Bond Road was acquired in 2017 from Busra Trading, measuring 6,000 meters square at an annual rate of 7,050 per meter square US dollars. To March 2020 for the storage of empty containers, which amounts to $2,250,000 annually. Don't you think that this is something that your institution can sustain this?
Thank you, Honorable. I am led to believe that maybe there is a typo in that particular section of the report. Because the name of the operator, I mean the occupant or the owner of the land is not Busura. And then I'm not too much of a figures man, but what I'm reading might be some typo error. Because not the name. The name is Guy Enterprise.
Can you spell it for us?
G-A-I.
Guy
Golf Alpha India.
Enterprise.
Enterprise.
So that is the name of the company.
Yes.
And it's 7,050 per square kilometer. Square meter.
No, the cost is far less than that. I don't know the figure on the top of my head, but
Okay, could you then find out, because we are trying to elucidate or overcome ambiguity or to rectify whatever is error. Could you give us the facts then?
yes,
Regarding that?
the lease
Yes.
dollar per square meter.
The agreement. You can even submit the agreement so that you know the agreement that has been made for this payment. Yes.
I believe what should have been reported is $7.50 per.
Thank you, Daddy. Okay, I would like to invite the auditor to clarify this for us because this information is from them before we proceed.
Page 41 Auditor General, and that is dealing with this fact of the land issue. That one road was acquired from Busura.
During the audit, what was given to us?
They say it's Guy Enterprise.
Yes, but during the audit, what was submitted was Busura Trading instead of Guy. So that was it. We have, we even requested for the lease document, which we have in fact. It was Sadi Mane and Busura Trading, not Guy.
So
For the empty containers, it was Busura Trading, not.
Okay, so
And
that's
that
what.
is what is also in the internal audit report, because we requested for the internal audit reports, we requested for the lease document, contract document for the lease properties in order to use it before we could use it in the report.
Yes, board management, could you look into that and then inform us properly?
Yes, Honorable Chair, we will do that. But what I can say with certainty is that it's Guy Enterprise, and I'm led to believe that it's a typo, meaning that it should be $7.050 per square meter per annum.
Yes, can you give us the agreement so that we see concretely who is involved in this exercise?
Yes, but in the report also, just to clarify, that Busura, we have an engagement with Busura, but he's not a landowner. Busura owns an equipment that we rent to handle the containers at the same site.
Yes, as she has said, they got information from audit reports, internal audit reports. So you should reconcile. It's more disclosure because they are not out to give information that is incorrect. So there should be more disclosure. That's why we are engaged in this exercise of consideration. So give them more disclosure so that we can remedy whatever may be an error in that or overstatement. Thank you.
Certainly, we will do it.
Yes, member for Latin Class.
I'm just looking at the lack of legal framework and expertise accommodation. Lack of legal framework and expertise to accommodate private sector participation in the ports of Banjul, that's the public-private partnership. Now, on page 56, that's the heading. But my question will be at page 57. Okay, no, let me start saying, you say both national and international companies have shown interest in collaborating with GPA, but none of them were successful. A classical example is a proposal of DP World, a company from Dubai, to build ports, operate and transfer it. An agreed period was unsuccessful, resulting in the company approaching the port of Dakar, where they are currently operating and contributing significantly to the transformations of Port of Dakar. Today, the Port of Dakar is ranked as one of the most performing ports in sub-region. My question to you is that, why was it unsuccessful? And is there any documents with you that will prove to us that this is as a result, that's why it is not successful? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. What I can say with certainty is that we did not advertise for any tender to privatize the Port of Banjul. What happened, we've been having unsolicited offers from a lot of international companies and port operators, not only Dubai Port World, but Bolloré, AP Moula Terminal, MSC, Millennium Challenge Corporation. We have a whole host of them. That's why manager decided at some point to now commission a master plan to really determine our needs. And then the business plan recommended that we can do the investment whilst the port remains under public ownership, increase the attractiveness and value of the asset, and then we'll be in a better position to negotiate with a private operator to do the soft plan. That's the strategic decision we took as a country. Not that negotiations with Dubai Port will fail, because there was no offer and acceptance in terms of intention. So the offer that came from DP World was unsolicited. Whereas in Dakar, they went through a public tender in 2008, and DP World happened to win the concession to do the Dakar port for 25 years. Part of the agreement was that if they achieve volumes of 400,000 containers in a year, they should do a new expansion in Dakar. It happened that in 2012, they had achieved more than 700,000 containers beyond what was in the concession agreement. So the Senegalese government called the concessionaire and said, look, now you have surpassed the target that was expected. It's now time to do the investment for the expansion. So since 2012, they were toying with the idea of how to do the expansion. In 2018, the negotiation started in Dakar, and it only ended in January 2022, when DP World as an operator decided that, look, Dakar, with all these problems about congestion, it's about time we go and find a new location altogether. That's how this Port Dendayan thing came about. It was part of an original concession agreement that DP World won through a tender. Our case is different. We did not tender to invite any operator to come and bid for the port concession. But they came and approached because maybe they saw the potential for business. But we are not averse to a private operator in the port. Right now, what we want to do is we will be allowed to do our investment, increase the value of our asset, and then we'll be in a better position to negotiate with a private operator for the subsequent phases of the port development. That's what we are doing, Madam.
So you are informing us that Dakar leased the port for 25 years.
Originally, in 2008.
Yes, give us the history. When that happened, what happened? What are the lessons we should draw?
Well, the lessons we should draw is for any private sector to come, there has to be value added, like a greenfield project, not a brownfield. Because what the intention was to come and take the port facility as it were, do some management restructuring, maybe bring one or two equipment and some transaction advisory. That's not adding value, because in a PPP arrangement, you expect the private operator to inject capital. If we had an operator who was going to commit to implement the whole of the master plan envelope, like $170 million, it depends on what government will negotiate with them. Retain my staff, pay rent, and then we also take a stake in the business, because that has happened in Senegal. The government is also a landlord and an investor, because they own 40% in the equity in the concession. So if those terms can be negotiated, we are open to negotiating with any private operator to maintain our HR, bring the new infrastructure, in fact create new jobs, and also bring business, because DP World, they are a ship operator.
Yes, I have a question. And you talk about the master plan. But will you agree with me that GPA master plans is not working as you might thought? Because if you look at this page, on page 40, where we say, according to the fourth master plan, 2019-2021, GPA aims to achieve a dwell time of 5 days and below. But if you come further, it says, terminal congestion is one of the major challenges faced by GPA in the cargo handling process. Studies have reported that the port of Berlin has a container dwell time of 7 to 8 days, which is mainly caused by the congestions at the port. And still, we say that we wanted to draw a master plan in order to be able to make some of these issues that we are talking about. So do you think that this master plan issue is working for you?
Certainly, Honorable, with all due respect, it's just that we were delayed in the process. As I mentioned earlier, the master plan was commissioned in 2019, July, and there is a business plan that accompanies it. What we anticipated in end of 2019, we had almost gone to a stage of agreeing on a loan to do the jetty with Africa Finance Corporation. But our partner in this arrangement, Ministry of Finance, advised that we can opt for a more concessionary funding because the conditions for AFC, according to the Ministry of Finance and assessment, is that it's too stringent because the claim on the default mechanism, for example, that government will have to relegate all other obligations, debt obligations, in the event that the port defaults, and their debt should be ranked number 1. And the interest was 5.8% LIBOR plus, and a grace period of 2 years and 12-year repayment. So Ministry of Finance advised that you can get more concessionary terms in the DFI. That's how we switch now to engaging ADB and AFDB. But if the plan had gone according to our expectation, by now we would have seen the getting almost nearing completion. And then the dwell time would now have gone to 5 days.
And you are confident that if you took that loan, you'll be able to pay it?
Certainly, and it's guided by...
So to you, it is the Minister of Finance who really obstructed GPA's progress?
Well, I wouldn't say because they are our owner. So they advise.
You are putting it that you believe if you had that loan, you will be able to pay it.
Yes.
They say go and get something that is more concessional.
Well,
we'll get finance, we'll get that. We'll make sure.
As the main 100% shareholder.
Well, essentially, it must be understood that even though it is 100% shareholder, it is also the objective to make the institution to function as an autonomous institution. That's why it is a public enterprise. That's why it's not a government department. That's why it has a board. So that you do what is in the enlightened interest of the board in the public interest. So you must be heard when you are capable of doing something, then that's your performance contract. If you fail, you fail. You hang yourself. Your board chair?
Mr. Chairman, I think we have to be transparent here. As a board, we have negotiated with AFC, and during negotiation, they actually told us that, are you sure that you have the authority to finalize this agreement with us? And we said, yes, there will be no government interference. Unfortunately, they have conditions with the IMF and World Bank that made it difficult for them. Like I said, the GPA debt was going to be a contingent liability. As a result, they said, no, we cannot proceed with that idea. That was the reason they gave us.
It is true, board chair, that you cannot just go and negotiate without finance, so that the Public Finance Act having the authority to
let me finish.
But that authority must not be exercised unjudiciously. That's the issue. That it should be an oversight, not an imposition. And where do we draw the line? That's why we're having this audit exercise.
Right, that was our concern, because we were saying that the conditions of AFC to finance the project could have been negotiated. Because the reason why the Minister of Finance thought that they could not take up that contingent liability was because they conditioned in the agreement. But we thought, as a board, we could have negotiated and got that waived, because we were going against the balance sheet of the port. And
what is the current situation with that? Is it still something that...
Well, it is suspended, so...
Yeah,
but we
it is something that could be...
we agreed with the minister. We discussed this matter with the minister last Thursday. And we agreed, because they didn't look at the implication of the delay. because this has not in 2 years delay of the project, and all what we are discussing here, the congestion, the price rises, and all those things would have been resolved had we been able to build the necessary capacity at the port. So now, and all this, we have customers almost $12 million on congestion charges. So the minister now appreciates the situation. Now they are ready to face the World Bank, and all their concerns say, look, we are going to go our way if we cannot expedite the process. This is the
we'll get this if our time permits. We are at the tail end, but we will draw the minister into the whole issue so that it forms part of our report. Yes. Well, yes, but they cannot speak for the minister. Well, I'm being alerted. I think they are couriers of information. They should go and say that we did mention that there was a blockage to a process that could have led to the materialization of an objective to implement the master plan. So that will be communicated. We'll draw the minister here, so that at least we can reach a conclusion on that issue, because that will facilitate speedy implementation and all these congestion issues would have been addressed. So we can take that as a priority in following that up, since it is still available. I don't remember. You want to, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Could we please go to page 41? Board and management, we were informed that the issue of congestion is something, but the states at which solutions are implemented is extremely slow. I emphasize the word extremely slow. What are the constraints that you are regarding to this?
Well, most of the constraints are to do with statutory procurement processes, and the fact that we are dealing with international development financiers who at every stage of the process you require their engagement and no objection. So this is all what accounts for the delay. And the material deviation from a strategic path that was already conceived and agreed, that warranted 18 months of delay in realizing this project. And as Chairman alluded to earlier, we will be gratified with the Honorable Chair and the Honorable Committee's assistance in engaging these two ministries. But just to bring you up to speed, last week, Thursday, we had a crunch meeting from, I think, 10 a.m. up to 3 p.m. The Minister of Finance, the Minister of Transport, the Board Chair, and myself. And we came to a resolution that we now align all our strategic operations, our strategic action, that the task list is already identified. And we will stick to them once we do all our preparatory activities. They have taken the commitment as Minister of Finance to come up with the money, leaving all the options on the table, including this AFC loan.
An issue is this, Stevedoring. You've mentioned the history, and to offload is demand-driven. Somebody must have the energy and must be paid for a service. So, do you think the post is the best institution to be hiring stevedoring and then retiring them at 60? Should that not be entirely the affair of those people who are going to render the service, and that they engage directly with the shipping agents rather than the post authority for their payment? What was the situation before?
Well, right now,
what is the situation?
The expectation was to register a private stevedoring cargo handling company in which the unions would hold 50% equity, and then the GPA would hold 50% equity. The strategy is, after 2 years of the private company being in operation, the GPA intends to exit from the scheme, and the shares will be sold to individuals and private Gambians who have an interest, but not to shipping lines, because to avoid conflict, shipping lines are going to be users of the service. As we speak, the expectation was that by January this year, the company would have been up and running. But we have had challenges in implementing a transformation that predates the existence of the port. And dealing with unions is also quite challenging in the sense that they have this presumption of jobs for life. So their notion is it's something that they cannot be subject to a labor law in as much as there is a GO that says 60 you retire. For them, since there was a gap when the Labor Ordinance 63 and the Ports Act was 60, there was no provision to cater for them. So now that's why we believe that this arrangement will address all of these issues. They will now have a stake in the company to determine their own terms and conditions.
So,
By March next month, March hopefully, we're well advanced. The company is almost on the verge of being registered, and we have a technical assistance from a Ghanaian firm that also have experience implementing a similar system in Ghana. And the objective is maybe in the 5 to 10 years to come, there might be an opportunity to even create other companies, private companies, to offer the same Stevedoring service, so that at least there will be competition in that aspect.
yes, Auditor General, you've been sitting down and listening to us carefully interrogate the report. Is there anything that you would want to mention at this stage for the guidance?
Yes, I have a question.
You have a question?
Yes.
Okay. The member would want to ask a question.
Yeah, I want to
And also
direct you to page 42.
42.
Post-stacking method. In the third paragraph, we are told, in addition to best practice in container stacking, require that containers are stacked distantly in order of dispatch, transit, shipping line, company, and empty. Are we clear?
Yeah.
Okay. We noted that the stacking method in place at the port of value make it difficult to trace and track containers, as containers are not segregated or sorted by order of shipping lines. That is, all the containers are stacked indiscriminately, irrespective of the shipping line, which makes it difficult during the cycle. As a result of this, the service delivery is delayed, as a lot of time is taken to locate a container before they can be cleared. This was substantiated by the confirmations of the Director of Traffic, who highlighted in an interview. So what are you doing about this issue?
Honorable, I think there's some immediate efficiency improvement measures, as I mentioned earlier. Once we access these areas, we'll have more space to do a proper stacking pattern, because the equipment are designed to operate within aisle width of 15 meters. But because of the volume, and there's need to offload ships, the aisle widths are less than 6 meters in some instances, and this causes heavy wear and tear on the equipment, and also a safety concern for even the workers and people coming around the port. Why we are also not respecting stacking pattern then was because of this space constraint. But right now, because the area is being filled up progressively, there are designated zones for stripping, and containers are now being stacked by shipping line. All the exports are now moved away from the port and empty containers. So that's the strategy we're doing going forward. And part of the digitization, port digitization, we are also implementing. We are not waiting for the bigger project. So the marine, which is the cargo handling side on the wet side, and the cargo information system on the dry side is about to be launched in by way of public tender, so that we'll have IT solutions for container tracking. It is something that is coming pretty soon. We've done with the technical specifications for the document, and I'm sure within the next couple of weeks it will be out in the local papers for service providers to design new systems to handle the containers using IT systems for tracking. In the meantime, there are point of sales that are installed at the port for consignees to come without having access to the port. Just point the container numbers and it will tell you the status, not the location, whether it is in value or not, at least as a first way. So these things we are doing.
Thank you. Page 44. We were informed by the auditors that we made a site visit, and in that 3 reach trackers were procured in December 2020, including container trailers and traders. These are, however, yet to be commissioned. If they are commissioned, they will, to a large extent, help in improving service delivery and reduce the overusing of plants. And these plants, as they are kept lying or stationed at this port, are subjected to wear and tear and go over time. Why is it that they are not commissioned? And also, I would like to know how much did they cost, if possible.
One piece of equipment would cost 490,000 euros. That's the rig stacker. What I believe the one being reported here that was expected for delivery, those were already delivered. What we have is challenge in procurement. That once a supplier meets all the technical requirements, then you determine the price. So it happened that the procurement will not also allow us to choose a particular brand that we, our operators, are familiar with, and it's also easy for operations and maintenance, and even stock of spare parts. So these are some of the challenges that we have. Those two equipment have been delivered, but they are not being utilized to the desired expectation because they are different from the brands that we had before. So these are the challenges we have. The two that are expected in January 2022 have been delayed because of shipping problems as a result of the COVID and also some LCE transactions. But we are on course to ensure that the equipment are delivered in time. But mostly 2020 to now, delay in shipment was as a result of the challenges in global shipping as a result of the COVID. But these two particular equipment being reported were commissioned on time, but the level of performance is not as compared to previous brands that we had in the past.
MD, we all know that 490,000 euros is not a small amount, and the reason why we are doing this exercise is to have value for money. And onto that, the time that you are procuring these equipments, I think you are at liberty to choose which brand will be good for your institution before going for something like 490,000 and yet the purpose is not fulfilled.
Thank you, Honorable. Maybe these are one of the areas that maybe we may get the Honorable committee to assist, because as I said earlier, we are constrained by the procurement regulation. We are not at liberty to choose a brand. We can only identify the specifications in terms of the equipment, the output, and then price will be the determinant.
So what you are telling us is that they are yet to be procured?
No, they have been procured and delivered.
And
But
delivered. So
yes,
what about the usage? Remember, it's focusing on the usage.
Yes.
It's not been used to the maximum to address the problem for which they were bought.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of mechanical issues with the systems in terms of the hydraulic systems and because these are,
yes, you know that is what the problem is on board, MD. Should we continue that trend?
no, what can we do?
Just purchasing equipment without capacity building, maybe capacity building even before the actual delivery, that don't you think it is essential to really establish a technical unit, because you are dealing with real technical issues as far as Post Authority is concerned. So is it not important to establish a well-founded technical unit which will at least attract people with the requisite expertise in the areas that we are talking about, so that prior to delivery they will be there, present, gather all the information and do all their testing before actual delivery? Don't you think spending few dollars to get somebody transported to the place and master everything that needed to be mastered and bring the equipment and operate, isn't that the best? Isn't that not the best way forward?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Part of the procurement contract involves pre-shipment inspection and training of the users, both operators and the mechanics. What I was alluding to was the problem in identifying the brand. Because here where we have a specific brand that our operators and technicians are already familiar with, and we have stock of spare parts, and we go for a new piece, and then the procurement regulation does not allow you to say, I want a Mercedes-Benz. You can only say you want a vehicle with a 2-liter engine capacity. So whoever meets the technical specification, then you now look at the price. You can end up getting a Renault or a Porsche. Just to give you an analogy, the situation we find ourselves in. And it happened that these two equipment, they were technically compliant. When it comes to usage, it's different from what we have on the ground. That's what I was trying to allude to. But not the expertise required in terms of operation and maintenance. That we have an in-house team, and they always look up.
But MD, you're not answering my question. What is the problem of performance? The performance is what we are assessing.
Well, we have
the equipment, new new equipment,
The ones before,
but is underperforming. Why they underperforming?
well, there are some technical challenges with the equipment.
Yes, what type of thing? Is it the technical challenge of the machine?
Yes, of the equipment.
You purchase, is it because of lack of capacity to operate, or is technical problem of the machine itself?
Well, technical problem of the machine because they are
Or
built with a lot of.
we don't have any guarantee when we purchase such machines that,
The warranty is normally 1 year.
and that has
Elapsed. Yes, that has elapsed.
so.
What we believe is that there should be that latitude in the procurement to allow, for example, if you have a performance record.
We need to look at the machine itself to find out why would it, instead of 10 years of a fault, has not even done anything. I think the board should really sit down and look at that and then be able to assess and give us a report on why you have the situation that you have.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I think I can add to this discussion the fact that the board did appreciate the weaknesses in the procurement of GPA. And some of these reasons that they cannot argue and justify buying the type of equipment they need was a problem. So you end up selling with, like you said, 100,000 euros is a lot of money. But that we are addressing a two-prong. I think we can group the department with procurement unit now so that they will buy what is.
Well, don't you think there is need for an independent assessment, technical assessment of the equipment and why it is having problems? That's the point.
But now that the equipment is in-house, it's already in place, and the operators are showing that they don't have the competency to operate it optimally. I think that's what
don't you agree with all that you need an independent assessor to come and assess why these machines cannot deliver? Because it's the machine now that cannot deliver. And because maybe the capacity of those running it, then we raise that issue, why were they not trained? Because it's part of the template. So, and if it's part of the template, well, could we not request for their training? Even though, as you said, the guarantees have elapsed, but could we not now work on that and see that they are well trained to operate it before they ruin it?
Okay, I think that we look at it at two levels. Accepting that the fact that the equipment are in place and they need to be utilized, the operators must be able to do so at the optimum. But as a board, what we are looking at is how did we arrive at this situation and to now resolve it moving forward. So I think
we don't have that mandate. Our mandate is really the performance audits of the Auditor General. That's what we are assessing.
right.
It's telling us that certain equipments are lying down. Why are they lying down? That's really the interest. And we are saying that why don't you get an independent assessor to find out why that is the case and advise board so that you know how to handle the present and how to prevent record.
Okay. It would be easier to say we can get an assessor, but what I'm thinking now, if that capacity existed, we will not find ourselves in this situation. Because the assessments would have been made prior to the procurement. That's my worry. That's why I don't want to just easily say, yes, we can make an assessment.
But wouldn't you be willing to do
But
that?
now, I think
If we were to recommend that you have an assessor now,
yeah.
The procurement will get your cooperation.
What I want us to confirm is the procurement had a package, a training package as part of it, whether that was actually implemented. Because we must have paid for those services. I think that's the issue.
Yes, the training is always fulfilled, and for our operators, they are certified operators, not only operators, but they can train other operators, because these are certified instructors. So the level of the operation, I believe.
I don't want to tie you down to this small thing. All I'm requesting for is
Technical assessment.
wouldn't you see it prudent to have an assessor that will really, because this is the Auditor General's report, is saying this is their line, is not operational. So why is that the case? Well, I'm not competent to really know why. Maybe they felt, well, they can only report on the matter. But who is competent to really tell us why? It's somebody who is technically endowed. So wouldn't it be prudent for board to ensure that it gets a report on what actually happened to complement the auditor's report, performance report?
Certainly, Honorable Chair. There are people, experts locally that can do the assessment.
Okay, thank you. So once we get that, then it is showing that we know the problem, and then we will be able to avoid future recurrence. That's the whole purpose of the exercise, is performance audit. Anything more? So could we then go to the Auditor General so that what we may have left behind or what we may not have asked, because already the substance is there. Auditor General, could you assess us to see whether we have assessed your report in the most thorough of ways so that we proceed with our own report?
Okay, indeed, thank you very much, Chair. I think you have done.
So every time the Auditor General wants to speak, you say, so could be the last time to talk. Auditor General, pardon us.
Yeah, my response, what I want to say is about the management response on page 48 about this post-stacking method. We are told by the management that the post-stacking method is the direct outcome of the need to accommodate and increase volume of containers, which is not marked by correspondent increase in the storage areas. The opportunity to adopt the recommendation stacking pattern compatible with the equipment in use could only be achieved with increase in the space allocation. But according to the management, when the MD was talking, he talks about the space that is there. But to me, I don't think really that we are giving us a solution to this. Or what I want to ask is, do you have any other solution? Because people are saying that
he's saying whether you have an immediate way of handling it, a knowledge base of handling the problem before space is provided.
Honestly, Honorable Chair, it's a factor of volume and space. The volume we are required to handle in the space that is available is not amenable to doing the stacking pattern. So additional space is
the answer. Well, he's saying that's the final answer. But with your expertise, isn't there some arithmetic that you can employ
we have
talked about, I think, the congesting the area, the
yes.
area. So you were proposing a solution of the congesting, the organizing, using certain spaces.
Yes, Honorable Chair. As I mentioned earlier, if we allow these private operators to handle all activity with the MDs and the exports, it will free up space that we can now do the stacking pattern that is amenable to the type of equipment. Yes.
Let me ask the question. For example, when containers exit, is it not possible to give time frame and say that you are existing today, within 4 days you should bring the container, otherwise isn't there a way of regulating in terms of time sequence for containers to come to offload? So there is no way of sequencing, because this is really a knowledge base for you, and the more you have the expertise, the more others will learn from you. It means that you are handling a problem with a major difficulty of space. Shouldn't that be a province of someone to study? I think there may be a way of doing things, of stacking, etc., that goes up the sky or somehow.
Yes. What is happening is that
we can exploit and see whether you can come up with something with the limited space you have.
We're doing that right now because the shipping lines have been encouraged to evacuate all their long-standing. But why there was a backlog is we have a charge that is incremental. And for them to avoid the charges, they need the force in, force out. But because of the space, that force in cannot be accessed. So we're doing that with the shipping line. So once they evacuate all the containers, now we'll have a little bit more room to handle the containers more comfortably.
Yes, I have a follow-up.
You have follow-up?
Yes. I'm just so concerned about this on the MD. Because we are told also by the client agents that also this concern during an interview. Sometimes it takes them days to locate containers and will sometimes have to pay casual workers to search for the containers within the terminals. And then you know that when they pay casual workers to clear and look for their container, they will add this on top of the goods. And as a result, if you go outside, this is going to be buying things at a very, very high level, at a high price. Sorry.
You're right, Honorable. We cannot put the issue in much more clear terms because where you are required to do 4 containers, 2.5 tier in a 12 deep. At any point, you just need to move 3 containers and you access the 5th one in the middle of the road. So to search for containers should not be difficult. But because you are doing a dense stacking, 12 row, 4 high, that container which is in the middle, the 7th container, it will take a lot of time to even shift to access it, much more to locate it. And that's the problem we have.
Will you believe between that we are in technology war now?
Well, yes, but that would involve maybe having GPS and sensors in the floor where they are stuck.
Well, that's the solution. Why don't we look for it?
No, but the solution is there, but there are more immediate problems.
Okay, but what we are really driving at is you are facing a problem.
Yes.
And you are facing the challenge. Could there be solutions even without the provision of the space at the moment? Because there are primary, secondary issues as well. Could you think about it? It's tagging, because sometimes if you accept the challenge, you find answers. And as you said, digitalization, would that help in some way?
Immediately what we are doing is we are freeing up the space and it is having positive impact on shift productivity. Because when we are doing 30 containers in a whole shift, now in a whole day, now we are doing minimum 70, 80 containers per shift, per container shift. So it's having immediate results and we expect it to improve even further. We had 15 days waiting time. For the last month when we looked at the statistics, it's dropped now to 13. So and we expect it to drop more progressively because of these efficiency improvement measures we are taking. And this can be verified from information within the traffic statistics.
Thank you. MD, can I refer you to page 50? Where we are informed that the dock workers register within that 2% of the dock workers are 60 years and above, which is in violation of the GO, all public institutions. Again, in some cases, there are some relatives to cover their staff on their behalf, then the remuneration is made in the names of the 8 workers, who then agree with the subcontractor on the percentage to be split. The graph below demonstrates the share of dock workers by the age cohort. I would like to ask this question to the board. Board, why is it that the board will allow these age workers to still be there and also subcontracted? There are these things to the younger generations, and also collecting or splitting the remuneration that these people should be entitled. Is it in line with the GO or is it in line with the Port Act?
Thank you. Of course, it's not in line with either the GO nor the Port Act. The 2007 Port Act, what we, as a board, what we tried, our position was we have to just implement it. There cannot be anybody appointed by the port that is not that should not serve the terms and conditions of appointment of the port. So all these anomalies of dog workers expecting jobs for life and all this, we thought that it could be ignored because now they are staff of the port, and the port, there is no provision in the port to allow for two forms of employment. But now I think the problem here is the audacity to willingness to just implement that and deal with the consequences. Because dock workers are normally unionized, and I think the threat was, they threatened me that they will go on strike or all those kinds of things. But the issue here is, so the solution we propose is to establish this Stevedoring company, so that we will resolve the matter in a more amicable way. But the threat of civil, what I call it now, social actions or labor, because they are telling us actually, and the environment didn't permit for us to push. But now we found a solution around it. That's why we're establishing this Stevedoring company, where they themselves will hold 50%. And the plan is they will even allow other Stevedoring companies to be established, so they cannot monopolize the service. They will have to compete. So over time, we will have the efficiencies required, not to avoid a situation where discipline agents will be left at the mercy of these unions. Because I remember the chairman asked before what we obtained before. Because before the discipline agent lines were hiring, they were paying the dock workers directly. But then there was a big strike because the way they were treated, they were giving them their lunches were put in bags and they were distributed to them. And I think before independence, a lot of things happened. That's why the port was tasked this responsibility of normalizing the employment of dock workers. But we are settling with a lot of problems of that nature. But I think, I don't know whether my answer is correct.
So now we can go to the other.
On the board and the management, if you look at that report on page 49, the word is Stevedoring. There are paragraphs that waiting, I couldn't tell the major importance. There are times where you would have to resort in hiring some helping hands to make the discharge of bulk cargoes faster, especially when the days for demurrage are fast approaching. This is an additional cost for the importers. Big day claim will be added to the cost of goods in the markets. So can we say what we are facing in the market is also as a result of inefficiency in our cost?
With all due respect, it's a claim they make, but we have to, because we have a register where we recruit dock workers, and there are two aspects. Dock workers work on board, while they hire laborers on the trucks to receive, because the cargo is not stored within the port, it's direct delivery. My belief is they may be referring to helpers for their own side that they are responsible. Dock workers do sublet, I have to admit. But what they sublet is to members within the register. Because in the unlikely event of an accident or fatality, the one that is recorded, which is not on the register, would not be covered by the insurance. We have had incidents in the past, and we try to discourage it as much as possible. Not denying that it happened, but to a large extent, it is amongst themselves that they sublet.
Yes, Honorable, can you general help us with this and clarify this?
Yes.
I think.
What the NDC is the view of those that they interview.
No, I think the fact is established that those who are there, quite a number of them are aged, and that they could get family members to really work on their behalf and their share. Well, that's an established fact. I don't think he's denying that. I think what he's questioning is if you say it's due to their inefficiency. It's in that these people are hiring to go and do the work of the. You see, the essence is that was the arrangement before, isn't it? That shipping agents would pay the dock workers directly, and ports was not really supposed to be involved. And that it seemed like in 2007, ports decided to have a law made by government to actually take charge of dock workers.
Actually, Honorable, what records have shown is that the dock labor scheme predates the establishment of the port. Because they have what they call the Labor Ordinance of 1963. That's what established the port. So when the port was created in 1972 by an act, that labor element was not captured in the Port Act. So that's where they have this notion of presumably jobs for life. They will tell you in your face that I am not on the port. I am paid by the shipping line direct. Because no arrangement was.
That was the case. They were not given pensions. They were not given. They had nothing to do with with government, etc. in that regard. So there are a lot of controversies in that. So as they say, they are trying to find a solution. We hope, wish them well, that they'll find a solution to that. Yes.
Yes. I have a concern about page 59. The recommendation by the auditors. Page 59. Recommendations by the auditors. Yes, it says, yeah, the PPP unit of the ministry. Correct, the first paragraph, but I'm not sure the paragraph, I'm just considering the point. That said, the PPP unit of the Ministry of Finance and Economy should, with urgency, complete the draft of the PPP policy framework and ensure that all the one steps are taken from the policy motion. The public-private policy framework should be extensive enough to be able to address and mitigate risks involved in this partnership. This is talking about the current partnership. When you come forward with the second paragraph, therefore, it says that the World Bank for identify 4 main port management models. That is the public service post. I think that's Gambia. You are using the model you are using now, and the other model is landlord port, tool port, and the private service port. But they said most ports, especially in the developing countries, are now using the landlord port model, where the port authority act as a regulating body, while port operations, especially cargo handling, are carried out by private companies, particularly terminal and lease to private operating companies. So, and the member told us that I think the master plan we have, those entities, you are service provider. But according to the World Bank here, most developing countries, it means it's the best practice at the moment that they are using this yes. And you mentioned that there is a delay in your master plan. So don't you consider if there is a delay and you make sure that this is one of the best practices, why can't you go for it?
Thank you, Madam, for that. The dilemma also in our situation is that we are peculiar. The fact is, you are transferring a public monopoly to a private monopoly because all they want is to come and do a greenfield. In all these ports that have been cited as private sector, there are concessions where the operators would come and invest in the infrastructure. They will reclaim land, build the jetties, bring the ship to shore crane, and build their business. But in our instance, that's not what is the intention. The desire is to operate the port in this current form. But if you had an operator who is committed to implementing the whole of the master plan envelope, well, good. Let government just negotiate on certain parameters to secure the national interest. That's what we're saying. We're not saying no to it, but we want to do our immediate, because our balance sheet can guarantee that. And then we go to the private sector for the soft part. But for the PPP law, we have been informed that the drafting is in progress. And I'm sure ultimately it will come to the Honorable National Assembly members for consideration.
Well, we do have the bill. Essentially, remember, we are asking them to consider what is a policy issue, because it is the government that will ultimately determine what option it has in terms of ownership. And what the MD is saying is, before you can form partnership, you must be equal in strength. But to just give up everything and then they come and manage by reducing workers here and there and just like former management, I think you see how that type of management structure is. So they will not invest, but they will make a lot of money by simply retrenching workers and yes, yeah. So essentially that's the debate. So what do you say to that? You want them to clarify more, or are you satisfied with it? Yeah. Okay, so now we can definitely go to the Auditor General. Auditor General? Back where we started.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. We don't have any further questions for management. What we want to say that as part of our procedures, we go back there in 2 years' time, that will be around late 2023 to beginning of 2024 to look at the progress that have been done with this report and provide a report to the National Assembly again on the progress that have been made by EDA.
So you will have an annual review
No, by actually we'll do that after 2 years.
after 2 years.
Yeah, that will be 2023. Because we completed the course, yeah, either in late 2023 or early 2024 to carry out a flow on this report.
So you have standardized that because it's good for that to be part of your
That's what we do.
whatever.
That's what we do for all performance audit reports.
Exactly. I mean, is it something statutory or is it something regulatory? Have you institute that as best practice?
Indeed, that's what.
So we recommend that also.
I just want to use the opportunity to ask the question, why was the board not involved in this audit exercise? Is there a reason?
What question did you ask?
Why was the board not consulted during this audit exercise?
Yes, I'm not sure whether you've given the authority to something they wanted to do.
I think the chairman should ask the manager.
But board, I think we defended you very well yesterday. In fact, we decided that we will not hold the meeting without the board's presence. I think you've seen the cloud that the board has, and clearly from henceforth, that is the model that we're going to stress, that the governing authority is responsible for all decision making and therefore must be consulted under all circumstances. So I'm sure that the exercise is another form of exercise, but then we will strengthen the authority of board so that they can serve as an independent authority and be accountable for what they do. That we will do. Thank you very much, members. It seems that you have done a good job of scrutiny, and the Auditor General has nothing to add to what he has said before, and what you may have added to further elucidation of any issue that may not have been very clear to all of us. We hope that this exercise will continue for the interest of the country and for the good performance of public enterprises, because it is based on your operations that the enterprise benefits and the nation benefits. So what we are doing now is definitely in the interest of your enterprises, and you should support it totally and fully. And we hope that out of it, you will begin to build up your own template of how to assess yourself. Hopefully, internal auditing will change. That it will not just be financial auditing, but it could also be performance auditing. So the whole world is being created, but ideas can only serve a purpose if you take them, internalize them, and implement them. So this exchange should have enriched all of us, irrespective of our areas of operation, and we hope that out of it, we'll be able to build something for our respective areas. We thank you very much for your cooperation. And in that instance, we are going to ask any member to make a motion for adjournment, but members can stay for us to do a small review of what has happened here. We may need to engage the Minister of Finance in order to push the port agenda, the master plan implementation, a little bit further, to give it a small push and see where we will go from there. Any motion?
I move a motion that we adjourn.
This move that we adjourn until any later date.
second.
It is moved and seconded to adjourn to any later date that is necessary. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those in favor say no. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, Auditor General and team. Thank you very much, board and team. We may see earlier than we anticipate if we see the need after our discussion to have the Minister of Finance and Works present so that we push this agenda a bit forward. Thank you very much. And if we do, we will be here. We will be invited. Thank you.
I think.